Afternoon. We have guests with us. You've been moved to the top of the agenda, so you can.
Go ahead and call roll first, just so that's
Oh, I'm sorry.
on record. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so we've got Bree Homan, we've got Kippy Laughlin, we've got Jim Arthur, we've got Joe Viviano, and then for city staff, we have Nate Leimeister and Scott Cromer, and Aaron Klein is present as well. And then we have special guests Chris Weedle and Roberta Weedle. So you can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Meeting is now coming to order. Would you folks please introduce yourselves again? You're here on a special appeal, correct?
That's correct. I'm Chris Weedle. This is my wife, Roberta. I'm here to appeal the decision at 403 East Adams.
Thank you. You have the floor.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm supposed to stand up there.
As you all know, the problem is with the trees that was listed, the trees I actually planted, the fact that I did not buy them from a nursery and that I didn't know what I was doing, basically. So I would like to explain myself. I'm a farmer, farmed all my life. I still farm now. Around my farmstead, I've got over 1,000 trees and bushes, 95% of which I've planted myself that were 2 foot or less when I planted. Those trees have come from a nursery. They've also come from nature. I actively go out and seek trees to dig up and plant. The trees that are planted along the Boulevard of 403 East Adams, along Adams Street, and along Franklin Street are trees that come from my farm, the trees that I dug up there. How many of you here have seen the trees that are in question? Do they look healthy?
They're growing.
No, if they weren't healthy, they wouldn't be growing, would they? The problem, as I understand it, is with the species that I've planted, which are primarily golden rain tree. So how many of you here really know much about the golden rain tree? Go ahead, Charles.
I had several on my lot, and it's a flowering tree. It's a small tree, and it does flower. So it's fairly hardy. There is a disease that can bother that tree. They do need some attention.
Well, to me, they almost meet the definition of an ideal boulevard tree. They only get about 35 feet tall. They have an open canopy, so you can look through them. They have small leaves that never need to be raked. All you do is mow them. Never need to gather the leaves. And the girth of the tree rarely exceeds 16 inches, mature. So they're a small tree with an open canopy. I believe that the problem with them, which Mr. Leimeister said, was because of the propagation of them. Do you know how golden rain trees propagate? They don't have nuts. They don't blow in the wind. Birds don't eat them and carry them around and deposit them. They don't grow that way. They fall in the grass. They don't grow that way either. The only way they propagate is if they would happen to fall into flower beds or tilled soils. I have one on the farm, which is the one where these trees came from. I don't have any trees on the farm other than in a flower bed a few feet away. The flowering part of the tree you're talking about, they flower, they have a golden flower on them. Each one of those flowers turns into a seed pod, a triangular elongated seed pod, which is basically feels like it's made out of paper. Each one of those will have 3 seeds in it. The seeds do not fall out until it's mature. The pods fall on the ground, into the grass, you mow them up, and that's it. So I really do not understand the problem with having those trees as a boulevard tree. I don't see them as evasive because the only thing around these trees is road and grass and sidewalk. So that's my case. I just don't understand why they're not an excellent choice for where I have them planted. I have a large lot. There's 24 trees that I've planted around the boulevard. When they get larger, I'll probably eliminate every other one of those trees as they start to get bigger and start to block the view, et cetera. But to me, they're an ideal tree. That's all I have to say. Questions for me?
Thank you. Well, I'll start off with, this is the old saw of asking for forgiveness after the fact. There's City Ordinance 900 and something, I forget what it is off the top of my head, regarding planting, doing anything with trees on city property. The boulevard is city property. You probably wouldn't have needed to be here even if you would have asked prior permission of the city before you planted these. And there's some question in my mind about the species themselves. Seems to me there are two species there at least, one of which may be a staghorn sumac, which is actually a shrub we found out. And or it could be a tree of heaven, which is anything but that. So we're not exactly 100% sure on what the two species are there.
Would you like to know?
Well, based upon the leaf sample that I took and shared with Ms. Holman, we did some research. One of those two species, almost without a doubt, is a tree of heaven, which is basically a weed which colonizes underground. And according to an article that was in the Sandusky Register on the weekend of Saturday, Sunday, August 28th and 29th, they're almost impossible to get rid of. It's not a species, either of them, that the city has ever planted as a boulevard tree. Fine on your own property in the backyard or whatever. I believe Mr. Viviano's golden rain trees are in his backyard or whatever over at Cedar Point. So the boulevard isn't an issue there. But that's my take on it at this point. Bree, you were involved in the identification of these. Do you have anything to add?
Well, I don't believe it's a tree of heaven. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think, one did look like the staghorn. It looks like there's two different species that are there. But the only thing that I'll say just about golden rain tree, that species actually appeared on, I cannot remember. It was like the downtown tree planting list. Do you guys remember what that was? I forget. You guys asked our recommendations on it like a year ago. And golden rain tree was on the suggested list from the contractor that was submitted to the city, and we actually had that tree removed because of its invasive nature. So that was one of the recommendations that came out of here. That species is becoming a problem in the Cuyahoga County area, mainly because of its invasive nature. So I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on there that, you know, it is a tree from Asia. It's not necessarily something that we want to be planting around here. Obviously, we plant lots and lots of different types of hybrids and things like that, but that one, at least in my mind, is one that should throw some caution, and it is something that we've recommended as not being part of boulevard trees.
The original golden rain tree that was introduced to this country was brought here by Thomas Jefferson from France in the 1700s. If it could be invasive if you were going to plant it around tilled soil, but that's the only place those seeds will grow. They will not grow in grass. They will not grow anywhere else. They only grow like in a flower bed where you have tilled soil. That's it. And as far as the three trees that you misidentified, those are actually butternut maples. They do appear like sumacs when they're young. This winter, you'll find that most of those branches will actually freeze and drop off. But eventually, probably after this winter, a few branches will stay on, and it is those 3 trees are butternut maples. The reason they are planted there is because they're by my floral mound, which has tilled soil. So I did not want to plant golden rains there because then I would have volunteer golden rain trees.
What's to stop squirrels from taking them and burying them? Do they not like them?
Squirrels don't eat them. The seed is actually smaller than a BB, about half the size of a BB. We have squirrels and chipmunks, they just don't bother them.
If they're that small, that means they could fly in the wind then, correct?
No. They don't fly in the wind. BBs don't fly in the wind.
They're also made of copper.
Pardon me?
They're made of copper, BBs.
Well, I live in the country. There's much more wind in the country than there is in the city. And I don't have any growing any further away from my tree than 20 feet.
I don't know much about it. I'm asking. I really don't know too much about them. But
No, they don't. Rodents don't eat them, don't carry them. The wind doesn't blow them, more than a few feet because they are small and compact seed. Like I said, the flowers develop a paper pod, which is approximately 2 inches high, 3-sided. And inside each of those, there are 3 small seeds. And those seeds are probably plus or minus 1/8 of an inch round. And they are firmly attached to that paper pod, so they don't fall out until the pod drops from the tree and gets on the ground. I'm sure the reason I get some of them in my flower bed is because I hit the pods when I mow, and the mower distributes them. But those are the 2 species. There's 3 butternut maples, there's 21 golden rain trees. And I will admit that if you're going to plant them in a garden or in a garden setting, they will be invasive. But if you plant them in grass, they're not.
So, I guess the way that I'm seeing the issue is, first there's the planting without permission, which is, against what the current protocol is for a resident to plant trees. With skipping that step is kind of what brings up the next big issue, which is the type of tree that was planted. Had you come to the city and said, I'm able to get these trees, I know how to plant them, and you can get that waiver, that permission to be able to do so, as soon as you said golden rain tree, that's probably where the flag would come up and say, well, you know what, we can probably give you permission, but it's going to have to be something off this list. So that was kind of the second issue. I think the third issue is really the density of the planting. Now, if you were doing a forestry planting or some other type of tree planting, I wouldn't disagree with the density that you planted in. But when you're thinking about the boulevard trees, and you can drive all the way around the city too and kind of see what the density, and I appreciate that you say I'm going to come back and remove trees, because that's what you would do in a forestry planting, right? You'd come through and then you'd go back and thin out. But we're not talking about a forestry planting, we're talking about the boulevard. And so I think those are the 3 issues that I'm kind of grappling with on this. And the other thing too, and I say this every single time that we have a special issue that comes up, is that we've got to be really careful about what type of precedent gets set when we allow one resident to do something where we don't allow another resident to do the same thing. When there's a rule on the book, there's a rule on the book. And we have to be very cognizant about how we're addressing what those are. Otherwise, you got to get rid of the rule. So.
Well, who is responsible for planting trees in the boulevard?
Well, the city is responsible for planting
The city didn't
them.
plant any. I've owned it for 6 years and they never planted a single
I
tree.
can tell you, I'm in a neighborhood as well that I've been waiting for some additional trees, and I guess you got to just be patient sometimes. I think, the hard truth about the city of Sandusky is that, and they're not the only community that's gone through this, but when times got tough back in the early 2000s, there was a lot of departments that got cut. Forestry was one of those, and I think that the city has been doing leaps and bounds to catch back up on the management. Just in the past 5 years, I think the city has planted more trees in the boulevard than they have in the decade before that. So, the city is truly trying to catch up But I agree, it's probably not as fast as everybody would wish.
Just trying to help the city.
Which is why we have that secondary measure that will allow a resident to go through and purchase their own tree and plant it as long as they have it checked and approved.
Why is it necessary to purchase a tree?
If you don't have the patience to wait for the city. I mean, that's essentially what,
My question. You know, one of the things that Nate put in the thing was it wasn't from an approved nursery. Why does anybody have to get the tree from a nursery? God plants trees every day of the year. Why do you have to go to a nursery to buy a tree?
Because most people don't know what they're doing when it comes to growing a tree like the experience that you have. So it's a special situation for you. And I don't think I filled out the form that put it. There was our last supervisor, Todd Gibson, denied that for you. But that's why we want it from our nursery. We want to know what's being put in our boulevard.
There are no golden rain trees in the city now, except for mine, correct? They're planted in Boulevard?
There is one.
There's one? Is it
Yes,
causing a
because
problem?
after you brought the golden rain tree to my attention, I looked into our tree inventory, and I did find one, and it's, I don't remember where it's at, but it's doing okay. And I actually looked into the golden rain tree more to see if that's a tree that we do want to plant. As of right now, we are not. And as of right now, we are working on our master tree planting plan. So one thing that we're doing is we're picking the appropriate tree for all the appropriate spots. And with the golden rain tree getting a max height of 35 feet and it being under power lines there on Adams Street, that is a tree we wouldn't put there
Well, the
because
pow-
it's going to get into the power lines.
The power line poles are 50 feet there.
They need 10 feet of, they need 10 to 15 feet of clearance. I'm not sure what Penn Line or Ohio Edison has for their clearance numbers, but one thing that we try to do, so we're consistent throughout the city, is have a small tree selection under any primary power lines, and we don't want that tree to be anything above 25 feet. Doesn't matter what the height of the pole is. I'm not going to go through town and measure every pole to see what that height is. I'm going with a standardized 25-foot tree.
You're familiar with the scale of the house there, correct?
Relatively, yes.
Top of the house is what, 50 feet tall? Give or
All
take.
I could say is an eyeball guess. I don't know.
It's up there, 40 feet.
Yeah.
It's a historic home. It's a National Register home. You put 20-foot trees around it, they're going to look like bushes.
We don't want them getting into the power lines. We don't want a 50-foot tree to go into a 50-foot power line.
Trees, they're not.
They're going to be close enough that Ohio Edison's going to have to trim them, and then we're going to have the power line clearance crews come in there and have a misshapen tree.
How many feet does a power line need?
You can call that, I can't quote you exactly.
We have Ohio Edison, an employee or a staff from Ohio Edison that's going to come and speak at one of our tree commissions about pruning around power lines and, you know, the pros and cons of it because of the misshaped trees that we've gotten a lot of calls on. So we've reached out to them, and a representative is going to show up and answer any questions that we have.
And the other big concern, I agree with Bree a lot, the density, the number of trees you put in there, that is way too many trees for us to maintain. We don't want that.
Well, I understand. The reason I planned that many to start with is simply to give some sort of a greenery to the place because it's naked. It was naked, nothing there but grass. And I agree, they're planted too thick. When they get up to be 12, 15 feet high, absolutely, they need to be thin. Until then, they will aid the trees that are next to it to grow vertically, not to branch out, just like they do in the woods.
But we're not in the woods. I said, we're not in the woods. Like we talked about earlier, we're on a city boulevard, and we can't set precedent like Bree had mentioned, and having a large planning like that, and then the next person thinks they can do it, and then we're having special meetings all the time.
I think we all agree we want trees in the Boulevard, and they look beautiful, and they improve the property value, and they create shade. And I think our main goal on both sides, yours and ours, is to get the right tree in the right location and the right density. I mean, I think that's where we've got to come together on this. And I agree with Bree. I wish we could have had the conversation prior to not get to this point, so we could, come together and get it planted so everybody can be happy about this.
Well, along Franklin Street, there is no power line.
And on that boulevard, we would prefer a large tree. I don't know what the butternut maple is, I'm not familiar with it, but
They're a 50-foot tree.
we wouldn't be putting 3 of them right next to each other either. We would be probably putting 1 tree in that spot.
Well, again, the only reason 3 are there is simply to get them growing. The middle one will come out. If you'd like, I can take it out now. Eventually, it will come out. To me, if I was on this commission, I would be more concerned about the butternut maple than I would the golden rain tree. Because the squirrels love them and they transport them. Golden rain does not get transported. So is there a compromise or isn't there a compromise?
I keep going back to the point where we started, where I started, that there is a system in place to promote and maintain the urban forest. Protocols, the system, whatever you want to call it, and you have circumvented that system. And again, you wouldn't even need to be here tonight pleading your case if you had asked prior permission and gotten input from this commission on what, in our minds, is a more appropriate species to plant there.
Well, I did approach the city once before about planting trees. I approached because at that time I belonged to the sanctuary, which is the First Baptist Church. And I offered that we would take the East Park, and we would plant that to a forest. And we were flatly turned down, even though at that time there were no benches in that park and there were only 3 trees in the park. And we were flatly turned down for it. So I don't believe that, there's no doubt that there are more trees being planted now than there were before. But there aren't nearly enough trees being planted. That's a fact.
Well, I agree with you on that. I mean, I want to see.
We all agree to
I
that.
think, I think we would all agree with that one. On that note is, I think we're planning, and then we did a large project a couple of years ago, we planted over 400 of them, but we're also planning them in mind, in keeping in mind the fact that our staff has to maintain them. And I think it comes back to, I know the property's up for sale now, and I know that you own it, but eventually those trees, or actually right now they are, our city property. So it is our responsibility to maintain them and to trim them and make sure they're not become a hazard down the road. So not only are we looking at what they need to be now, but where they're gonna be in 20 years from now. And the responsibility we have to maintain them and trim them and take care of them. So, I mean, picking out the right species is definitely important when we go through this process. So, I mean.
The canopy of the golden rain is 20 feet. So they're not going to get in the road.
So when you say in the butternut, and I'm not familiar with that tree, but when you say in the butternut maple, are you saying that, you said that would be one that we should be more cautious about than the golden rain, so.
In my opinion,
Are you-
yes, because because the squirrels will take those and carry them and bury them.
So they bear fruit, obviously.
They have nuts.
And nuts.
They look like a pecan nut.
A pecan nut.
They're smooth shell. Look
Is
like a
this-
pecan nut.
So,
Is this butternut like from the Jungulans species? Is that what it is? Is it like a regular Northern American butternut? Because I've never heard it called a butternut maple.
It's
That's why.
a butternut, but it is a member of the maple family. It's
A
not a
member of the
member.
maple family,
Yes,
so
it
it's an acer then.
It's an odd duck. It's an odd duck all the way around because it looks like a sumac. It drops its branches off until it's 3 or 4 years old every winter. It's an odd duck. There's no doubt about it.
And how many did you plant of that species?
Pardon me?
How many of that species did you plant?
I planted 3 right in front of the floral mound. And there is no electric line above them.
I mean, why did you pick that species? Because it's something that grew on your property? Or is it?
Yeah, it's something that I have in my property. I have hackberries, I have butternuts, I have walnuts, I have wild cherry. I have, a lot of trees that I transplant.
So, and with the fruit-bearing trees like walnuts and those are not ideal in our boulevards for obviously,
Right.
the reason why. So that would definitely be one that we would.
Well, that's
Frown upon.
like the regular butternut is closer to a walnut than a maple. That's why I'm kind of confused. I've just never heard it called
I had never either
Butternut.
until I looked it up.
yeah.
It's, like I say, it's an odd duck.
Well, and I think you always have to be careful whenever you're getting any tree that's why I'm asking, is it actually an acer species or is it, from the walnut species? Because if it is walnut, then you're dealing with the toxin that produces too, which then prevents grass and all kinds of other stuff in the boulevard. And so, and I think that's one of that other, I'm kind of like beating a dead horse here, but you asked the question about why should we buy a tree as opposed to pull one out of the woods? Well, when you purchase a tree, that's regulated through, USDA so that tree is disease-free and, it is the species that you're purchasing and things like that too. And that helps to kind of get around some of these issues when you're thinking about, the urban forest, I suppose, that you're really talking about. You have to be careful about some of those things. So, and I think that's where, we're using common names. That's something that you then don't run into when you purchase this tree, because then you know exactly what species it is, so. And I'm sorry, I'm just struggling on what a butternut maple is.
The reason I know what species they are was these 2 particular trees, I bought them as that.
Okay.
The parent tree I bought.
Okay.
The parent tree for the golden rain I brought back from Williamsburg, Virginia. The parent tree from the butternut came from up at Grand Rapids, Ohio. I like to plant a whole variety of trees. I don't like to plant a lot of any one, because then you get in big problems like we did with the ash trees.
I made that mistake.
Right now, I have a whole lot of wild cherries that I have to transplant. Don't ask me why I have them. I don't know where they came from, but I've got them and I'm going to transplant them.
Well, we're all lovers here of trees, or we probably wouldn't be here. And the thing is to find the right place for the tree that'll benefit the neighborhood. So we do have rules, and the rules would be to go through the commission and make your application and go from there.
Well, would you like me to make an application for the trees that I've planted?
I'm just curious why you didn't do that to begin with, because you knew that the answer would probably be no from prior experiences.
Yes.
So you figured it was easier to ask forgiveness than it was permission up front.
I figured if I ever wanted to have trees there, I better plant them myself.
I just heard Scott say something about the property is for sale. Why is this even an issue for you?
For the same reason that I took on the project and finished the house. It's a historic property. It should have trees around it.
I've never seen a list of recommended street trees that included golden rain trees as a boulevard tree.
I'm sure you've seen a list that included the Bradford pear, which is now people are tearing out.
All right.
So those
That would be
lists
an
are
old
not-
list.
Those lists do not come down from heaven.
Well, I think we've heard enough where we could vote. Does anybody want to forward a motion that we vote on? Has everyone heard enough?
I guess what is the current status right now? Have you received a letter that has stated
Received a
what
letter
action needs to take place, or what?
I've received a letter that said that there was a meeting today that I should attend
Okay.
to prevent the removal of the trees. So I am here.
Okay.
And I apologize, I couldn't be here at your last month's meeting. I was out of state at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, this was the last letter that was sent, yeah, I think it got.
Okay, so it was removal of all trees
Yes,
planted?
yes.
Okay,
We
that's
were
what I wanted to know
waiting
what
for him to
the,
show up and state his case, and then
Okay.
he said if not, we were gonna move forward on the removal of it, but yes, this was your time to, yep.
Well, I'm in favor of the tree commission voting members to vote now. And I'll take the lead and cast the first vote. I'm still against making an exception to the city ordinance 920-something. I forget off the top of my head. But there's a city ordinance about planting trees, shrubs, anything on city property. The Boulevard is city property. So I'm voting against allowing those trees to stand. Joe? What say you?
Well, what is the motion? What are we voting for or against?
To remove them or let them stay?
To remove them?
If we do remove them, then you can come and say, okay, well, what kind of trees do you want me to do there? Come to an agreement then, correct? And it just seems like a lot of work for something that could have just, come forward in the beginning and said, hey, I want trees there, I want pretty big trees there, what can we decide on? What do you guys recommend?
I did ask for trees to be planted, and I was told there was a list, and my name would go on the bottom of the list.
Well, not in the bottom, where.
And I will say this to you, is that we have made leaps and bounds on planting the trees, and which is later down on the agenda, but we do have a tree planting that we're doing here in the fall, 25 trees, 24 trees, to be exact. And that, when that is completed, we do have a short list that after that of approximately about 20 trees that we will try to get planted in the springtime. So I don't foresee, you being like, if these get removed, and that's what the vote says, that we would put you on that list, and most likely that planting that, for that property would be in the spring and at the latest of next year in the fall. So just to give you a little bit of an idea where we're at on the tree planting schedule, because I know when I took over 5 years ago, that list was hundreds.
Yeah.
We've slowly, and I understand it's not, I have a lot of trees and I'm not very patient either. So I understand you want tree and you want shade and you want it to look nice. So, but just to give you a little background, is we've made leaps and bounds. So I don't think if these do get removed and it's voted down, that the opportunity for you to get trees would be here next year at the very latest.
Is that part of the motion?
I don't think that's part of the motion. It's gonna be up to them and what they want to do, and then we'll go from there.
I think that might be hard for us to do because we can't order the city members what to do. We can recommend.
I'm just telling you the facts of what we have and where we're at, so.
But, I would be an advocate of getting trees planted on that corner. Here you've got a property that's been renovated and you've got two sides of a street that right now doesn't, there's not even a lot of vegetation even on the grounds of the property, correct? If I remember right.
No, there is not. There will not be any foundation planting because it's an 1800s house and they did not have foundation plantings. What we have to do here yet is to build the veranda on the east side. Once we get that done and that excavation done, I'll be planning, you have to excuse me a minute. My brain synapses don't always come together. I'll be planting hackberries in that east yard. To me, hackberries are an ideal city tree. We have one in our yard that is as old as I am. To this date, it has only ever had one branch cut off it. You never rake the leaves, they mow up, and it's 35 foot tall and about a 30-foot canopy. So you put them in a woods, they're an 80-foot tree. You put them in a yard, they're a 35, 40-foot tree that you never have to rake the leaves, you never have to trim until they're probably approaching 70 years old.
That's a good native. Berries are good natives.
They do love a rock too.
Well, again, I personally would have liked to have seen an urban forester involved in the planning process up front. There is an urban forestry plan in place as property is upgraded and any new trees that are planted, for instance, down on Market Street, 2 new houses going up there, and other places around town, that the urban forest plan will be referenced when trees are planted in those areas. And again, I keep going back to, we have a system in place and it was circumvented.
Jim, I have to go, so I'm going to go ahead and vote. I do vote to remove them, unfortunately, because there are rules in place, and I think that we should all work together as a community and as a team to achieve the ultimate goal of having, the right set of trees and the right amount of trees. So that's my vote, but I do have to leave at this moment.
Okay? Bree, how say you? To,
Unfortunately, I'm also going to vote for removal. Again, it's the circumventing of the current rules issue, density of the tree planting, and then not the right species, that we want to see in the boulevards. So I'm not against trees. I'm not against planting trees, but I am very, very concerned about just making sure that things are done the right way from the get-go. So, and I would also recommend to immediately put that corner on the list, to get them in, so.
Well, I don't think we can add that into the vote.
Okay, well then I'll add it in afterwards.
Joe, stay or go?
Stay? No. I agree that he should make an application, and that's, we'll have to remove the trees or whatever while we're waiting. I mean,
Now, this isn't a dead issue. We can work something out down the road, I'm sure of it. But as for those 24 trees that you planted, I'm against leaving them in place, so my vote too is no. But we can come back and talk and figure something out. It's not either or. So we've got 4 votes that are all no to maintaining the status quo as far as the trees that are planted in the Boulevard at 403 East Adams Street remaining in place. So I'm sorry, but this forum is denying your request to keep what's there now.
I think we do have to look like our citizens of Sandusky. They all watch everything other people do. And if we give somebody something different, they're right on us. And then we have to change everything. So I think if you were in the other shoe watching somebody else plant them, you'd have been over and told us, that guy's against our regulations.
Well, I have asked all my neighbors what they think of them, and they don't see any problem with them. So you're right, actions have consequences. You come in and remove those trees, you will hear about it probably. So that's just the way it is. You know, you've got a house that didn't have anything, then you have a house with trees, then the city comes and takes them down. Doesn't look good, but that's your decision.
And I think we're trying to, Chris, I just want to say, I think we're trying to do it in a respectful way. It's not that we have to come in and cut them down. Like, if you would want to, pull them out and save them and plant them elsewhere, that is your right. We're not here to destroy a tree that's already growing. So if.
Why not leave them there till you plant the new ones?
Something to consider.
Well, I hope you would consider that.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you for attending
Yes.
and pleading your case. The next order of business is, do you want to do tree stats? Or do you want to go on to, well, let's just mention the new.
Can I just jump forward? Can we talk about, you guys are planting trees this fall? I didn't know that. I thought there was not gonna be any this year.
I know.
We didn't think there was going to, but we have funds available and we don't want
Have
to
you
miss the
guys-
opportunity, so
Have you cited your locations and stuff already?
Nate did.
Yes.
They went through we went through the planting list, Elizabeth consolidated, Nate went out and verified that it was still an ideal location and that it wasn't a false location or something that got planted that did get marked. So he did go out and identify all the locations and ended up getting, you actually got the trees, right, ordered and.
Yeah, the trees are at the greenhouse right now.
Swing by and take a look at them. They're healthy. They're nice looking.
I will look at them.
A couple of them almost look like they're too big to plant. There's a
That's what I
couple
said
of-
when I unloaded them from the truck, so.
Oh, the
What species are you guys planting?
variety.
We've got 2 beech trees, 2 magnolias, 5 red buds. There's a dawn redwood in there.
The ginkgo that's going in the floor.
Invoice, like the most poetic invoice.
Well, but
There's
are these
2
street
ginkgos.
trees?
Yes.
Some of these are- Really? We're gonna do red buds on the
Magnolia
street?
we have
Yeah, I
some-
thought that was odd myself.
No,
Not
no,
much different than
they're
a golden
both
rain tree.
located.
Okay,
I gotta order that cemetery, or,
okay.
so,
Yeah, are we
so,
are we doing red buds on the street trees?
yes, we're going to try them. I did a lot of research on it,
Yeah.
and we're gonna give it a shot.
So those ones are gonna need to be trimmed pretty heavily though, because they just get so top heavy. As soon as the wind hits them, they just break branches all the time.
So,
I've got 2 red buds at my house that I have to trim like you would not believe, just to keep them healthy. But I mean, I know you've got some right at the greenhouse too, but.
right, and we're gonna put those under power lines, and we're gonna keep them trimmed, because they're smaller trees, they're easier. It's easier to trim a red bud under the power line than it is a maple tree that's
Maple
under the
tree,
power
yeah.
line.
No, I love that tree. It's one of my favorite trees, but
So-
I just know they're
We're gonna give it a
a little
shot.
bit of a hassle.
We're not gonna overwhelm ourselves with it, but we're
Yeah.
gonna give it a try.
Test it
And-
out.
Yes.
That's
And
interesting.
That's what a
That's
lot
good.
of this was about, was testing, and right now, I'm working on like a master tree planting plan. So I'm testing these to see if that's what we wanna pick for that block, and kinda go from there, so.
Nice.
The one tree I do know where it's going is the ginkgo. It's going at the Triangular Park on Cleveland Road there. It's an honorarium kind of tree.
Yeah, that
for-
one was donated by Barnes.
Yes.
Oh, he donated that.
Yes, that was, that for,
That's for Talon Floors,
Oh, okay,
because he had a lot to do with fixing up that corner.
nice.
Have you conferred with that? Tom already picked out a spot there. Did you confer with that?
yeah, I talked to him, yeah. I
Yeah,
think-
okay.
I think we're on the same page.
Good, good, good.
So the tree, the master plan that you guys are coming up with, I mean, is that something that you want some assistance from the tree commission board on?
I think the plan was, yes, to get it grouped together and then to bring you guys in and to get your thoughts on it, yes.
So, yeah.
I think this was kind of, this planting list was kind of not planned.
Yeah,
But we had the funds and we didn't want to miss the opportunity, so
right.
and I don't think Nate's completed the master plan list yet, but I think this was one that we kind of jumped ahead on just to get them out there and get them planted and not lose out on it. And then with narrowing down, I mean, we narrowed down and took away, Elizabeth knows, I mean, quite a few trees that were just not, locations that were just either bad locations where it was overcrowded that Nate saw, or it was already planted, or somebody didn't want it when we reached out to them to say, hey, we're gonna plant your tree. They were like, oh, we don't, you know. So there was, we kind of weighed all those and then we narrowed that list down. So really after this, we only have about 20 trees on that list to go. And then we can start picking out areas and locations that we can start doing these.
Like a concentrated planting in a block.
Okay,
Where-
Chalet Drive, I'm saying.
Yeah.
Tree planting, Chalet Drive. We've lost so many trees over there.
Well, it's nice that we can get there finally. I mean, after I saw the list when I first came here, I was like, we're never gonna get there.
I'm just
but-
saying, it was really hot walking down the
Yeah, we're
street
So
this
this thing
summer.
kind of happened quickly though, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Okay,
It did.
I thought so. From my
did.
distant, I thought
It
it
did.
happened like almost overnight. Hey, we got some money.
No, it's really good to hear, because I remember when we were talking, budget recommendations and stuff last year, we
And we've
thought that
been-
2021 wasn't gonna be a planting
We've
year
been
at all.
very
So it's just good to
conservative
hear.
on what we spend, so, and we always had it in the back of our mind, but it just happened to actually work out, so it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, right.
That's
Things always
wonderful
come up and
news.
you're like,
It's great
oh
news.
man, we just had to spend all that money on repair work for a chipper or, stumper, but it actually worked out where we.
And then there's this grant possible
Yep.
that the city's taking a look at maybe.
Yep.
Another grant from the feds?
Is that the one, that's the one I think you guys probably.
You guys have sent out, we don't have capacity right now
Yeah.
Right.
to apply and fulfill, but I think those will keep coming out.
Yeah,
Yes.
But you can pick a number according to this grant funding request in the range of 2,500 to 25,000.
up to.
So you guys could pick a number. But it also says, and it's highlighted here, no later than October 29th of this year. Okay, so there's opportunities for more. So this issue that we just talked about with our guest has been pending for several months. I'm glad that it was finally resolved. And I still think maybe if he wanted to come back, we could work something out with the right species of trees in the right place. Okay, so fall planting of 24 trees. New returning staff member, Justin J. McKillips. Got anything to add?
Yes, we, during COVID, we had some staff reductions and we lost an employee. And when we hired back up, there was an opportunity in another division, which Justin was the employee that we lost during COVID in forestry. So we had an opportunity in another division. He was a successful applicant for another division. He's been working there for about, maybe a year now or 9 months. So we bid a forestry job and he was the only bidder and wanted to come back. So Nate welcomed him back with open arms.
Absolutely.
And hugged and high-fived and
I did a cartwheel.
for more help. So now we have 3 full-time employees, back to where we were. So we're making progress. Yes.
I was
Okay.
gonna ask about, sorry, I'm like.
Go ahead. No,
pulling
no,
your
no.
agenda apart.
I operate a lot more informally than most
The
people.
trees that were planted, I believe it was I think it was 2020. Maybe I'm just like blurring a bunch of years together, but was that the big planting that Corso did? Or Corsos did? Barnes?
So 2019 and 2020, fall of 2019,
And
spring of 2020.
so I've noticed there's a few young trees that were standing dead this summer, and
Yes.
honestly, I can't recall exactly what parks, but there's a few scattering. Were any of those tree plantings like under warranty then? Are they gonna be replaced then by,
They did a replacement already.
They did. We had to part of the warranty was that, or replacement warranty was that we had to show that we were watering.
Okay.
So Nate, when we had staff, with forestry staff and seasonal, we documented every time we watered.
Okay, so those were all
So,
covered
as long as
and
we
replanted.
watered, and then they, it was good, for warranty purposes. So when those trees died, within, I think it was a year warranty.
Yes.
They came back, Nate made sure that he got all that. They came back and replaced everything within that year after they were planted. So
Awesome.
all that's done. So now we're moving on to where we've had some that were vandalized in parks, broken off, maybe a foot or two high.
Yeah.
I would say maybe a dozen of them. So the
That
more-
many?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the more we can get the word out, and these, and I think Nate tried to, leave the stakes on to maybe help out, but, they just, it didn't work out that way. So those have been removed, but yes, those are in the works, as we're trying to get these boulevards and that tree list whittled down, and then maybe we can stagger and replant those that were damaged or vandalized.
Yeah.
So, yeah, unfortunately, but yes.
That's all well and good. So it sounds again like you guys are on top of the game. It's great. We haven't approved the minutes from the August meeting yet or given the tree stats. I don't have
I
any
can give the
minutes in
tree
front of
stats.
me, so I'm going to approve them.
I'll give the tree stats quick. So for the year 2021 so far, we've done 129 removals, 247 stump removals, 414 limb ups. We did a lot of those where the streets were being repaved and line of sight issues, so that's why there's a lot of those. Young tree training is 133, complete trims 50, dead woods 9, 328 inspections, storm cleanup, we had 44 different storm cleanups. Trees watered, 200 times we watered trees. And then on tree inventory, we have 89 trees marked to be removed, 118 to be trimmed, and 83 stumps that need removed.
Your 44 is those events or those were trees?
So the storm cleanup, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
There was 44 different maintenance tables on like cleanups that we did that were storm related. Sometimes we come in and it doesn't get marked. We're getting better, so
Right.
44 is a low number for that.
No, it's awesome that it just, from being on this tree commission for so long, it's so nice to hear all those different stats that you guys are able to manage now. So it really kind of gives more perspective on all the work that you guys do. It's amazing.
It does. It does.
And part of the resurfacing, like Nate went around, prior to that to hopefully prevent, broken limbs or because they have the paver out there, they have the milling machine, they have the 2-ton
Dump
dump
trucks.
trucks. So he spent a lot of time in limbing those up and take care of those. So that was a big task because you know how many streets got resurfaced. So that was good that we got ahead of the game on that.
I can't tell you how happy I am about Lane Street. It's scooter smooth now, which is my criteria. Now, when are they going to fix
Not talking
Meg
about
Street like
streets.
We're on tree commission, Jim.
that? I know.
No, I think it's always good to hear those stats because, I do think that there's still this perception that the city isn't really doing very much to manage, the forest that we have. And that's just simply not true. Especially when, again, we didn't take the same amount of stats, 8 years ago or even longer ago, and usually we only knew what was removed and planted, but it's like just to kind of hear about the amount of work that's truly being done to not only remove and replace, but maintain throughout, it's just really commendable.
It
I
is.
just wish more people knew. And it's a big job. You guys have almost 7,000 trees that you guys are managing
I think
year after year.
there's more than that.
Is there, I'm sure there's more, because,
Yeah.
I still would like to do a tree commission, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, not tree commission, city commission meeting with all those numbers in particular.
Are you volunteering to do that?
Well, I think
No,
they are
either you
giving
or
those
her,
numbers,
you two together could do it.
I was gonna say you need to run for city commission, but I think,
I'd vote for you, Jim.
I think you're laying.
No, that's not going to happen. Okay, tree stats. We have to go back to the beginning now, and I don't have any minutes in front of me. So I'm going to assume that Elizabeth did a usual exemplary job.
Yeah, and then I verified them through YouTube.
Can
I don't do YouTube, I don't do Facebook. I'm an old person.
Like, I can go back and watch what you guys said.
Yeah, right.
That's true. That makes
Right.
it really easy. Although you have to rewatch it again. Can we actually approve the minutes right now that there's only 3 of us? I think it's got to get tabled
Yeah.
till next month anyway.
Wait a minute, there was only 4 of us. Why was there 1, 2, 3, 4?
Actually, 3 meets quorum because there's only 5 of you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
Technically, yes.
I was thinking we needed 4. Do we need another member?
Nope.
No, you get more.
Okay, well, as far as I know then, we've completed today's agenda. It was very much worthwhile, in my opinion. Thank you all. And that's it for the September 21st, 2021 Sandusky City Tree Commission meeting.